Hi y'all, it's Kimberly here. Thank you all for coming to my channel. All the new subscribers and anybody who's been hanging on since the beginning, thank you so much. Today I was out doing errands and it's really cold here today. It's like 38 degrees, or it was. I think it's even dropped a few more degrees. But as I was doing errands around town for a few hours, there was at least half a dozen people who were wearing the flip-flops and probably twice as many that were wearing the shorts. And then there's these people that come in with no coat or just a long sleeve shirt on. I don't know why, because we're not used to the cold down here. And it was really cold last night. It was in the 20s, and it's going to be, I think, even colder tonight. The next couple of days it's going to be very cold, and the nights are going to be in the 20s. But that's just a phenomenon here. I don't know why, or I guess people think it's going to warm up because we do have that here. It'll be very cold at night sometimes, but in the middle of the day it'll hit like 60 or 70 degrees by 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I think they just think it's wishful thinking, but it's going to be very cold for the... This thing is... Something's flying around in here. Okay. I'm going to do one of the Bad Bosses, one of the installments for that. This is the pizza place I used to work at before I went to the manufacturing plant. The 2 videos I did before this. And Laura and Mary were working there. Or I was working there. Mary was working there. And then Laura got hired there for... She was a friend of Mary's. And she really needed a job. And so they hired her because of Mary. And she wasn't very good. She was very slow, and she just couldn't get with, the fastness that you have to have when you're in food service, and so she only worked there for a few weeks, and then she did help me get hired at the manufacturing plant, so that's how we kind of met, and that's how it connected. But this pizza place is I think it's in other parts of the country. There's, I don't know where, but it's like a chain establishment, and it has the really strong sauce. It's kind of known for having a spicy sauce, but I love that. It gives you really bad heartburn. A lot of people got heartburn, would complain about that, but I really did like it. And they have the potato patties called MOJOS, so that's the restaurant. And I love those. Those are so good. And the fried mushrooms, oh, they're so good. And before I started working there, when I was applying for the job, I used to go there and get the fried mushrooms, and this girl was there. I'd seen her before, but this time, when I was filling out the application, her hair was about, I'm not kidding, it was like that big. She had teased it out, and it was huge, like that huge, and it was long. And she didn't have it pulled back or anything. It was just sprayed, like, coming out like a lion's mane. And I was like, I can't believe they let her... There was not much, I guess, dress code there, and it was pretty lax, and I was like, ugh. She's been making my mushrooms all this time and my pizzas. And the owner there really didn't care. He was one of those bosses that just, he didn't have any interest in the job. Well, his parents owned it, but they paid him to manage it. And he just kind of, I think he was not happy in his life. He'd never had a real job. He only worked where his parents put him in their businesses. He would manage them, and sometimes they just had to foot the bill for him. There's many times where he was not working, and that was what the other employees had told me. And I can kind of see it in his behavior, because he would drink, and he would only show up about once every 2 weeks, and he would just show up to get some money, and he'd stay there for a couple hours. He'd talk, and he was a nice guy, I guess, but he did have a drinking problem. And one day I was at the register, and I was always at the register, and I hated it. And he was playing the video games in the corner. We had some video machines, and he was pounding on the screen and yelling, and he was he wasn't winning the game. He was really mad, and he was pounding on it, making loud noises like it was almost going to break it. And it was so loud I couldn't even hardly take the people's order. And they're like, what's wrong with that guy, you know? And I was like, oh, that's just the owner. He's drunk. I'm like, oh. And one day I was in the back room, and I had just finished washing the dishes. We were closing up, and he was there late. He was already drunk, and I mopped the floor, and then I was like trying to get underneath the sink real fast, and I was almost through, and the floor was real slippery. And he stood there, and when he bent down, he pushed my head to the floor, and I like within about a foot of my face hitting the floor, a hard tile floor, one of those restaurant type of floors. And this is before I took martial arts. I just reached out with my leg, and I kicked him as hard as I could in the kneecap. I just did like a little side kick, and I mean, it really did hurt him, and it kind of messed up his knee, and he was hobbling around for several months, and I don't think it ever really healed right, and he never bothered me again. He never did that again. But for a drunk owner to put their hands on you, that's just, I don't know why some bosses think that's appropriate or okay. It's not. And this guy was also colorblind, and one day he came to work. He had on a yellow shirt and a purple pair of pants, and we were like looking at each other and like, what a combination, you know, because he usually wore like brown or cream or white, or he wasn't like a loud dresser, you know, he's just kind of casual, or jeans, you know, dress pants or jeans, and or slacks, whatever. And my manager went up to him and said, that's kind of quite a combination you got there, you know. And he goes, what are you talking about? She goes, yellow shirt and purple pants. And he goes, really? He goes, I thought these were brown. I thought this was cream color. So he had no idea he'd been wearing these purple pants for like a year. He said, oh, I've been wearing these for like the whole year. And then we laughed about it. He said he's colorblind, and we didn't know he's colorblind until then. And one day, this is so inappropriate. I mean, this really made me upset, but this lady worked there, and she had a large upper testicular area, and she needed, she had one of the papers for I think it was food stamps or something like that, and she had a daughter, and that place, he never gave raises. I'll go into that in a minute, but she wanted him to sign the paper so she could go get the food stamp to prove that she only made minimum wage. And he was signing it, and it said something about, it had like a little section for the manager to fill out, and it said something about her qualifications or something like that. And he said, she's got really big boobs, like that. And he said it in front of everybody. The whole restaurant was there, and it was like, I think it was like when we had just shut the doors or something like that, and we were all standing around there fixing to close down. It was like really embarrassing for her, and I was like, oh, what a dog, you know. And he never had any ambition. He was just a hanger-on with his parents, you know, they just supported him basically. And yeah, he never gave a raise, and he was really, he only gave a raise to this one girl, and she would constantly say, I'm going to have to quit if you don't give me a raise, at least $1. And she was really fast. I mean, I'm fast usually at most of the jobs I do, but she was really super fast. But it didn't matter, you know. That's not a reason to, just because one person is super fast. We all did the same job that she did. We could all, you know, do the job. Maybe she would just do it like crazy. Like sometimes I thought she was like flipping things around like that, and it was like you had to get out of her way, you know. And so what? That was not a reason to just continually handing her out, you know, more money than everybody else. And she ended up making almost double what some of us made, and that was just so not fair. And I did like to work there because we got to eat everything we wanted for free, and he said we could have one beer, and that was really fun. And after we would close, when he wasn't there, like on the weekends, we had a big screen TV and all the games, and we would shut it down. We would fix us our food, and we'd eat a meal. Like, it would be like 1 o'clock in the morning. I think we closed at 12 or 1. And we'd all eat our food, and it was the weekend, and we would talk, and we'd stay there for like an hour and play games and watch whatever was on the big screen. It had cable then, and we'd watch movies or whatever. And I normally would never do this, but I ended up dating one of the managers, and I never would think of doing that, because that place just had no structure, really. People just kind of did whatever they wanted. It wasn't as bad as a manufacturing place. We didn't have the issues there, but it was like a lot of people just didn't do the work, it was like, I kind of hated it there because of that reason, but there was some fun elements to it that I liked, especially the food, and so we enjoyed that. And I ended up, I don't know why, but I will never do this again, but I had the blessing of the managers, and the owner actually said that I would be good for him, that I would be more stable for him, because I was, very, very structured and very stable in there. And he was a really good, smart guy, and he was gorgeous. He was the best looking guy I've ever gone out with. It was kind of like, when the person that you date is better looking than you, is like that kind of situation. He was older than me. I think he was about 29, and I think I was about 22 or 23. And he was real tall, and he was half white, half Hispanic, and he was just gorgeous. And he had long hair. It was in the, I don't know how, I was 21, 2, 3. I'm horrible at math, but I think it was like in the late 80s. I can't really remember, but I'm going to say in the late 80s, 87 to 89. I don't really remember, but he had a haircut where they wanted him to cut his hair when he first started there, because he had really long hair, but he went and got a haircut where it was cut short. And this is before I started working there. He'd been working there for a couple of years, but he had it cut short and parted on the side, and when he pulled it back in a ponytail, it looked like he had short hair almost. And a lot of people didn't realize he had long hair until he turned around and they saw his ponytail. But it was really neat and very trimmed. He did it that way for the restaurant so he could, have a neat appearance. But when he took his ponytail out, he had long hair, and it would kind of, not like a mullet. It was just a very unusual way he cut it, but it looked really good. And I told my friend, after I'd been going out with him for a while, which he tricked me into dating him. He had these younger friends, these girls, and some of them used to work at the restaurant. And they came in one night, and he was talking to them, and he goes, yeah, and they're like, oh, why don't you go to a movie with us? And it was like 4 or 5 of these younger girls. They were all real pretty, and he goes, yeah, that'd be fun. Okay, we can go to, I don't remember what was playing. And he goes, do you mind if I bring some other people? And they were like, yeah, we can all go as a big group. And so he asked me to go with him after the girls left. He came over and he started talking to me more and more. We kind of had been talking a little bit, and I kind of, he was cute, and I liked him. But I was like, and I was very young, and he was much older. And then, or to me, he was much older. To me, that was pretty old. And he asked me if I wanted to go. He said, we're going in a group, and it'll be a bunch of girls, and you won't be alone. It's just, and I was like, oh, okay. And I got ready, and I dressed really nice, and did my hair and everything. And then when we got there at the movie theater, well, he actually told me, I think he told me to meet him there at the pizza place. And then I think we drove there, and we were in his car. I remember that. And then he told me, well, when we got to the movie theater, he only bought 2 tickets. And he goes, well, as we were walking in, well, I guess they're not going to be here. I called him and told him not to show up. So he kind of tricked me into a date with him, but I was okay with it. And then we dated for a while, and then it kind of that place was so unstructured, and people just did whatever they wanted, and they had bad service. It was a great restaurant, but it had, sometimes the service wasn't very good because they just didn't pay attention to the employees, and that they were playing around. And he got upset about something. I can't remember. Some things were happening in his life. He wasn't happy, where he was. He wanted to go to school for architecture or something like that. I can't remember. But one of the people that worked there was his friend, and he was much younger. He was younger than me. There was like about 8 or 11, or he was like 17 or 18. And he was kind of globbing on to my boyfriend, and they had kind of talked about moving to Austin to both go to school to do something, and like in the summer. And it kind of, that guy, he was young and he wanted to do that, and he would, and my boyfriend was older and kind of, he was having a crisis, in his life over, where's, he's almost 30, where is he going, in his life. And so he started having one of those kind of crises, and it started affecting him. And then his dad had cancer of the jaw, and he had, about 6 months before I started working there, his girlfriend cheated on him. She worked at a home improvement store, and she cheated on him with her manager, and they cheated on the checkout counter, and there were security tapes of it that people from the place watched it, and they told my ex-boyfriend about it. That's how I found out. And he confronted her, and she confessed to it, and so they broke up, and he was really upset. It really hurt him really bad. And he went to one of the tables in the back one time and just sat down and cried. One of the girls there told me that, and I felt really bad for him. And he still had emotional problems from that, I guess, or I don't know, something, And I was so much younger, and I don't think he took it serious, and he just didn't do his job at work. He came in drunk a few times, and I really didn't like that. That really made me mad. And then he was so drunk one night when we were super busy, and he laid across 2 chairs in the office, a little tiny office, and I needed some change, so I just kicked the door open, and I hit him in the head, and it kind of clocked him pretty good, and I was so mad. And he wasn't helping. He stayed in there the whole night because he was sick from drinking, and they were just running wild. The employees were running wild. They weren't doing anything. And then we had a bus load of 4 baseball teams came in. One from each, the opponents from one game, and the opponents from another game. So it was 4 baseball teams came in. They were lined up into the parking lot. It was these huge, big guys. They were like teenage, it was, I don't know what school, out of town school. And they were just, and their friends, a lot of people who had traveled to this, to town to watch them, all 4 of them brought family members and everybody in. So we were over capacity. We were like double over capacity. People were like standing up to eat their pizzas and their food, and nobody was I was having to take all the orders. I took all of them, but it was overloading the kitchen. And there was like 8 or 10 people in there, but they were so disorganized. It was always like that, and that would just make me crazy sometimes. And they weren't taking the food out, and they were like yelling at me to take it. It's like, there's like, I'm probably like 75 or 100 people in line. It was constant, not to mention just the baseball teams. The regular customers were coming in. It was like on a Friday or Saturday night, and I took to the table real close. But I couldn't, I couldn't leave the register that, to take out these huge trays of food and the things of beer. I just, I gave up, and I used to run my butt off there, and I just gave up that night. I was like, no, I'm just going to take the orders. Y'all can get the food and take it out or whatever. And so the next day, Mary came and told me, they're talking about you, that you couldn't handle it last night. And that's why it was just a disaster. People were yelling, and it was horrible. And people called and complained, but they didn't complain about me. They complained about how long it took their food to get to the table. And I told Mary, I was mad at Billy. I got mad at Billy because she was the one who kind of said, well, she just couldn't handle it. And Mary defended me. And I told Mary to tell Billy, well, next time I'm going to call the fire department when we get over capacity. I'm not letting any more people in here. And they were having an issue with the money, and that's why they were going to shut the restaurant down because they weren't making as much money. And so when I threatened to do that, they got all upset, and I said, no, you're going to blame me for that. And this is the most, they made like more money, I think in like 2 or 3 years on that night, for the busiest night. And for them to come back and say that I couldn't handle it, I took order after order after order, and somebody had to be at the register constantly. And so it was like, it just made me crazy. And so I ended up quitting just about a month or so after that. I was just so disgusted with it. And, well, that was that. And I'll tell y'all more about my horrible bosses. I'll have another one pretty soon. Thank you all. Thank you so much.